From the Oklahoma newsroom, it's time for Thunder Thursday, our extended weekly look at Thunder basketball. I'm Jenny Carlson here in studio with fellow columnist Barry Trammell and Thunder beat writer Maddie Lee. Guys, got lots of games stacking up for the Thunder. Finally, they haven't played as many as a lot of teams in the league. But some interesting games we've already seen this week, Maddie, and a lot of interesting play by one Russell Westbrook. It's good Russ, it's bad Russ. I mean, he can't shoot his way out of a paper bag right now, but he's still affecting games. We saw it again on Wednesday night in New Orleans.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he had a weird game up until that fourth quarter, and then he turned something on, and he was fantastic. I mean, you have the most impressive part of that was those two steals that he has, or steal followed by deflection. Right towards the end of the game, they're down by 7. It looks like it's not going to be a game. Suddenly, he gets those two. You have a three-point play from Paul George on the other end, and the first one, Russell takes it on his own to the rim. And suddenly, it's a 2-point game, and they're back in it, and they get another inbounds play to potentially seal the deal, which they didn't. But, yeah, Russell, good defense, was really focused, had a couple turnovers again, but also had some phenomenal passing. So
yeah, he's still getting a lot of the other stats that aren't point related, but Barry, the shooting continues to be off, and it's not just one game. We've now got a collection of games that Russell Westbrook is still trying to figure some things out. Do you attribute it to the injury coming back? Do you attribute it to trying to figure out his place with these guys? What's going on here?
Well, he's clearly psychologically affected. Something's going on. It's really his foul shooting's where you see it the most. I mean, what was he, 2 of 5 last night from the line, I think, and he can't make foul shots anymore, and he used to be one of the league's best, not just for a year, but year after year after year, 80%. This year he's at 61%, 60%. So psychologically something's going on. It looks to me like Maddie talked about crunch time, and he sort of comes out of it. Sometimes when he doesn't have time to think about it and just plays, everything sort of reverts to the old Russ, and he's doing great. But when he's thinking about it, he's a mess. So, I don't know does the Thunder have a sports psychologist? If they don't, hire one. If they do have one, get a new one. So, that's to me is what's going on. I don't know what's troubling Russ, but the rest of his game is there. He's still charging up San Juan Hill. So. Just try to get that, and he doesn't drive as much because I think he's afraid of getting fouled and having to shoot foul shots. That was a claim on LeBron a few years ago. People saying he doesn't want to drive in crunch time. He doesn't want to have the game on the line with him at the foul line. And I think Russ is worried about having to make crucial foul shots because he's in such a slump. So they got to get that fixed.
Barry, you'll remember this. I remember this. That playoff game several years back. Kevin Durant's still here. Russ is shooting free throws. Kevin Durant comes over and sits. He can't watch, but Russ makes every foul shot. He was automatic.
He was automatic, and and he wanted the ball. That's where he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And now, even when he's missing badly. I mean, like. Was it Monday night? He barely gets the ball to the edge of the rim.
I thought we were going to see an air ball at some point.
And a few weeks ago, we did see one. It's crazy. So that's not a physical problem. That's 100% a mental problem. So they got to get that fixed.
Maddie, the guys after the game on Monday, and Russ was 4 of 18 in that win, and last night some of the same things I'm sure were said. But whether it's Billy Donovan or teammates saying they're not concerned about Russell getting the shooting thing figured out. There's not a concern. Should there be? I mean, they're saying the right things, obviously, but when it gets to the point where you're starting to see games back up with this trend, what's going on here?
I think yes and no. I mean, like they said, Paul George said, he's been a top scorer in the league. Like, that doesn't just go away. So I think eventually, give him a little more time. And he's been out for so much of this season with various injuries, and so part of it could be just getting back into the flow of things, reintegrating into this team that's been doing well without him, and being alongside Paul George, who has been phenomenal, and figuring out exactly how for them to work together, which they've done a good job of so far this season, but working together with Russ potentially getting being a little more efficient on the shooting side. But I think the good part that you're seeing come out of this is that Russ is closing games how you want him to, as opposed to games like Boston where we saw him just shoot. And so instead, he's really distributing the ball well once they get into crunch time, once you get down the stretch. And, you know, against Western Conference teams, they're going to need to finish like this.
Right.
Start a little better.
Well, and you know, what you say, Maddie, is right. You know, last night they had a game-winning shot attempt from Alex Abrines. A great look from a spot he normally will knock down a shot, Barry, and that was guys finding a good shooter in that moment. There's at least, he didn't make it, Paul George didn't make it that night in Chicago, but they're getting good looks from guys you'd want to be shooting in those situations.
I was encouraged, just the fact, not even that Russ, for the third straight tight game, gave up the ball, but that Billy and sort of drew up a play and Russ went along with it for Abrines. I mean, when's the last time the Thunder put the game in the hands of a role player? That hadn't been done in years and years and years. To me, that's very encouraging, that this is the kind of team that the Thunder's morphing into, a team that's not just going to go one-on-one with either Westbrook or George, but they're actually going to run some offense, see what happens. I think last night Westbrook probably would have taken it to the basket if it wasn't Anthony Davis coming over. Just about anybody else in the league, Russell, you know, might have forgotten his troubles and said, hey, I'm Russell Westbrook, here I come. Anthony Davis will make everybody veer off. So he made the right play, and Abrines was on the court for just that moment. And, you know, it'd been a great story if it goes. It didn't. Thunder loses, but to me that's a very encouraging sign for the future.
Yeah, definitely so. We talked about Russ's free throw shooting struggles, and guys, I hate to tell you, but he's not the only one. I mean, it may be more noticeable with him because he gets to the free throw line more, but 17 of 27 against New Orleans on Wednesday night was the Thunder. Maddie, this is, you know, Barry's talked about it. We've talked about it in a variety of ways. This is a franchise that historically has shot free throws very well, and it just seems to have evaporated. I mean, is there anything you can pinpoint? It's an individual thing, I know, but so is there anything that we can say, hey, this is wrong and it needs to be fixed?
Well, what's even weirder is for like a week there, they got it back. And they looked really good. And you had like Paul George hitting 11 of 11 from the line. Granted, last night he was 4 of 4, so he was one of the few non-problems in that area. But I'm a little flabbergasted by this. And when they first fell into that free throw shooting slump, you had Billy Donovan talking about putting them in pressure situations. The way that Jeremy Grant described it was basically they line up, they each have to make a couple free throws. If they don't, there's running consequences. And then they suddenly snapped out of it, and now they're very much back into this slump from the line.
Yeah, and
here's the problem, is they got two guys that aren't making them, and those two guys get fouled a lot, Adams and Westbrook.
Yeah.
I haven't checked in the last 2 days, but earlier this week, there were 145 players in the NBA who had taken at least 50 foul shots. On that list, Russell Westbrook ranked 134th in percentage. Steven Adams ranked 141st. Nice. So you got two of the league's worst foul shooters taking a bunch of your foul shots. This really isn't a team problem. It's a Steven Adams, Russell Westbrook problem. Adams has always been spotty at the line. Westbrook's the guy that's got to get going.
You know, I hate to say this, but we're sort of quasi-experts in bad free throw shooting around here because for years, Andre Roberson was such a focus with his bad free throw shooting. We've written about this a lot. We've talked about this a lot. Barry,
call Jim Poteet. Somebody call Jim Poteet.
I was going to say, is the fix to go just find clearly what they're doing and what they've done over the years with Roberson hasn't been effective. He's still struggling at the free throw line. Do you have to go out and get a free throw shooting guru at this point?
No, I would go get Luke from Modern Family. Remember that episode when his older sister couldn't learn anything? She's trying to learn, she can't get anything. She doesn't focus. He gets a water gun. And every time she gets an answer wrong, he just squirts her with the water gun. She starts getting the answer right. Hey, put somebody over there on the line at Thunder practice, just squirt them with a water gun every time they miss.
I like it. I mean, running is one thing. I'm thinking dollars. Dollars, talk to these guys, Maddie. I mean, there's got to be a fix for this. Nobody's guarding these guys. These are the best players in the world. They got to make these things.
They really do. Just start finding them.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Is that it?
Yeah. I mean, Barry talked about how Adams is on the line a ton. He was on the line 10 times last night. And 6 of 10 from him is pretty good.
It raised his average.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, but then you have to, you also have to have Russell Westbrook getting to the line more, because he only took 5 foul shots last night. So once he figures this out, that can balance things out a little more. I mean, when Paul George has had games when he's gotten to the line a lot more, he only has 4.
Yeah.
And he's the only one who can shoot them.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe you do just have to find them.
The Pelicans got to the line only slightly more, 30 times. So not a ton of foul shooting in that game last night, but
they scored 24 of them.
Yeah, they hit a lot higher percentage. So, guys, while we're looking at that game against New Orleans last night, there were some other things that were off for the Thunder, and maybe not as normal being off was rebounding. Now, Anthony Davis is on the court, obviously. But Maddie, Steven Adams to me looked maybe not as engaged as he was the first time these two teams played, and then you see Anthony Davis just going crazy on the boards.
Yeah, Steven Adams was so funny that first time. Laying on Anthony Davis, following him everywhere, and that sort of spark wasn't really quite there. And Anthony Davis is a phenomenal player. He's going to get his points, but 44 is a lot of points in one game. And then it doesn't help to have Jeremy Grant get 5 fouls as early as he did, because he's a fantastic defensive player with length. Patrick Patterson did fine on the defensive end, but you still want Grant out there.
Well, and Anthony Davis, 18 rebounds, 6 of them offensive, Barry. The Pelicans really made the Thunder pay with those offensive rebounds.
Yeah, now, the Thunder outshot the Pelicans. What was it, 48% to 46%, whatever it was. The Thunder outshot the Pelicans, and yet the Pelicans had 17 more rebounds than Oklahoma City. Amazingly, the second chance points, Maddie told me 18-18. So I thought the Thunder would have got killed in second chance points, but that's where they generally clean up and do really well. Had no advantage there. Just think about the Pelicans had 74 points in the paint. Think about how many baskets they made right at the rim. A lot of that's on putbacks. A lot of that was on the dunks or alley-oops by Anthony Davis off the pick and roll. The Thunder did not play good pick and roll defense last night. They needed to, I thought, in the middle of the game, sort of reassess, make the Pelicans hit some outside shots, go under the screen if you had. Do whatever you can. Don't let Anthony Davis near the ball and the basket, because it was going in.
Well, and Barry brings up a great point, Maddie. The pick and roll defense was off too on Wednesday night, and I guess as troubling as it is to see that happen against a Western Conference team that might be a playoff opponent for the Thunder, we really haven't seen them have as many defensive struggles, whether you're talking about rebounding or pick and roll. I mean, this was a one-off. They've been so good defensively.
They really have. Especially, we've been talking all season about how good their pick and roll defense is and how good Steven Adams specifically is in the pick and roll. And so it's a weird thing to watch, where the things that they do best, and honestly, things that they knew they had to do well coming into this game. Billy Donovan talked about it afterwards, where they were like, all right, we know that they're going to be good on the boards. We know that they're going to be good in the paint. We have to shut that, and we know they're going to be good in the line. We have to not give them room in those areas, and they gave all 3 to them.
Right. It was a weird game. At least you hope it's a weird game. You hope it's the outlier when all is said and done. And we're going to find out, because they've got some games against some teams where they're going to have to mind their P's and Q's better than they did against New Orleans. Friday night at Denver, Clippers here on Saturday, Monday against Chicago, which you hope that they turn the tables on what we saw at Chicago a couple weeks ago. Then at Sacramento, then a bit of a break before they go to Utah. Barry, we're starting to see these Western Conference teams, which when you look at the Western Conference, there might be 1 or 2 that you can say, yeah, that's a gimme game, a chip in or a tap in if you're on the golf course, but there's not many of them in the Western Conference.
No, and if they can just sort of hold their own against the Western Conference on the road, then this is going to be a successful season. I mean, you don't even have to win half of them. If you can, if you can win 40% of the road games against the good teams in the West, you're going to be in pretty good shape, because that's a tall order for any team. But they are going to have to play well to stay in these games. You know, they've shown that they've got the grit to even when they look beat, to come back. I mean, if they'd have won last night, that would have been a miracle. I mean, down 7. They're down 7 with ever how much time, a minute or so, and they throw the ball away. And you think, well, the game's over. And then, you know, a couple minutes later, Brenus has a shot in the air to win it. So they're fighting. They're talented. They're playing hard. They're playing well. But as long as they need to, you know, to get two or three of these road games in the next couple of weeks, just to offset some of the losses that are sure to come.
Well, and they're going to have their first test, Maddie, at Denver, Western Conference leading Denver, a team that the Thunder's already played this year. Now, it was the second night of a back-to-back, so, you know, you may see some residuals. I think both teams were second night of back-to-back. But what's the challenge when you think about that first Denver matchup? What's the challenge for the Thunder as they go to Denver and face a team that's still playing really well?
Sure. Well, you look at that first matchup, and they got down by like 25 points at one point, and then came back and cut it to single digits, I believe. And so you have to do a thing that they haven't done as of late, which is start off strong, go to Steven Adams early, get some easy points on the board, and then you aren't trying to pull back from a 25-point deficit, and you don't have to have these late heroics. They might still have to have these late heroics against a team like Denver, but if you can not dig yourself into quite such a hole and then still have the same intensity down the stretch, then you're in good shape.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Western Conference standings here as we're talking, and 5 teams that have a winning percentage of 63% or higher. Denver, Golden State, Oklahoma City, Clippers, Lakers. The next 3, if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. Memphis, Dallas, and Sacramento. And then you've got teams on the outside looking in that you think are probably going to be playoff teams before it's over in Portland, New Orleans, San Antonio, Utah, Houston way down at the bottom. I mean, there is so much basketball left. These games are, I mean, they're not must-wins by any stretch, but they're vitally important in a conference that's going to be tough from start to finish.
We're getting very close to the point of declaring this the best conference in NBA history for a single season. We're about 30 games in for most teams. You get to the halfway point, if you still got 14 good teams, that's never been done before in the NBA. There's never been a conference where the 14th place team is somebody like Houston, or somebody like
Minnesota, Utah,
for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jazz only won by 479 points last night. They were smarting from losing some games, and they just took it out on the Heat. The difference in the conferences is vast and mighty, and there's literally only one bad team in the West, and that's Phoenix. Everybody else is not just a potential playoff team, but a team that could even win a first-round playoff series. So it's going to be a dogfight. You're not going to see a 60-something win team in the West. The winner of the West, I still think it'll be Golden State. Not going to be in the high 50s in wins. If you're in the low 50s in wins, you're going to be in good shape for second or third in the West.
All right, guys, that road game at Denver on Friday, 9 o'clock. Get us ready for all of these West Coast starts. You're going to have to stay up late, Thunder fans, to watch that, but we'll have all your coverage, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.